Water Blueprint for the San Joaquin Valley is, we call it a coalition of the willing. It's made up of interested folks, including water agencies and commodity groups and cities and towns and interested organizations. It started off as an ad hoc group and it became formalized, so we have a board of directors. But it really sought to represent the entire San Joaquin Valley, north, south, east, west, and the stakeholders, because all of us, given the predominance of agriculture in the San Joaquin Valley, we all depend on a water supply to have our economy and quality of life. And what really prompted it was the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And up until that SGMA was passed, folks just put wells in and pumped water, and they really didn't know what their neighbors were doing. There were water districts, but they were very focused on their own interests. And SGMA represented an existential threat to the entire San Joaquin Valley. And so there was a need for a unified organization that sought to represent the interests of the entire San Joaquin Valley.
So everyone had to get out of their own silos. How does the Water Blueprint connect long-term ag viability in the valley?
Well, we're 2 to 3 million acre feet short, and the laws of SGMA say that by 2040 we have to be sustainable. It turns out it's probably quicker than that because of the damage that subsidence or groundwater overdraft in places that causes the land to sink is a real significant impact to infrastructure. And so that has to be slowed down a whole lot faster than 2040. So this whole thing has been accelerated. So the blueprint needs to be successful in providing assistance to basically capture more water. Can we close the whole gap? We're gonna try, but we got to do what we can.
Right. Why is regional collaboration so important?
Well, there's 20 plus million people in Southern California, and there's 2 million people in the valley. So 10 to 1, right?
Right.
We stretch, 300 miles north to south, 60 miles east to west, and we don't have the political power that, the urban areas have. And if we don't act as a unified body, we really have a hard time getting any kind of attention politically in the state.
Can you talk about some of the challenges you have to balancing things like infrastructure, groundwater sustainability, and just overall ag productivity?
Well, ag is always, is a cyclical business, right? So anybody who's been in agriculture knows it's, you don't always make money, and there's times when it's tough, just generally. And depending on when you are in your economic cycle, money is always an issue. And so SGMA brings, I don't think people think about it, but it brings a lot of just, it's dozens of new agencies that all need to be funded.
Yeah.
So that money, all the costs are coming out of basically farmers' pockets. So it wasn't like they were already flush with cash and now you have this burden, and then that's just for the paperwork. And then the restrictions and the charging for water when you never had to pay for water before. These are very large economic shocks to the dairy economy. And if it also coincides with, nut prices not being that great or milk prices not being that great, it just takes what was already a difficult situation. We're getting attacked on, from labor, air, all kinds of things. So it's, I don't want to call it death by 1,000 cuts, but it's just another thing, but it's a big thing.
Yeah, it's a real big thing. I'm wondering what organizers were hoping that the people in attendance today are going to take away from all the topics and conversation.
So I think that, let's start at the highest level. The legislature passed unanimously a mandate to the Department of Water Resources to come up with identify 9 million acre feet of new supply at some date in the future, 2035 or 2040, something like that. Well, just a recognition that we need more supply from the state is a paradigm shift for them, because all the talk has been about, reducing the water supply, and finally there's a recognition. So top line, I'd say, okay, well, that's good. We're making some progress because we in ag have been saying this. So what does that actually mean? And I do think that this event This is kind of the first of its kind, and the officials at the Department of Water Resource invested time in trying to figure this out. And so we're all wrestling with this, and what this is a process to try to figure out what are the priorities and how do we move this forward. Now, the blueprint for San Joaquin Valley, we've been working on a unified valley water plan for about 2 years, and it's just about done. So we've done all the things that the DWR needs to do for the state. We've done for the San Joaquin Valley. We've identified how much water we're short by area in the valley, what the opportunities are, how much we can get out of local supplies that we have by managing them better, what it's going to take to actually manage them better, because it's going to require investment in infrastructure. And then there's a remaining shortfall, and where do we go for that? And you know, in California, there are wet areas of the state, and there are very dry areas of the state. And we've built these big water delivery systems to move water from areas of abundance to areas of need. Those systems need to, for sure, be able to deliver what they were built to deliver, just the conveyance. And then there's been huge, and what you're seeing here is a recognition that the regulatory costs of particularly environmental laws has really restricted the ability of that system to deliver. There's, you know, the waters in the north and the demands are in the central and the south, and our delivery mechanisms aren't working very well. And some of it's infrastructure, and some of it's regulatory. So that what you saw today in this process is a recognition. Really, we need funding. The ag can't carry this on their own, and even the ratepayers in the urban areas can't carry it on their own. So there's a state investment necessary, and there really is a cry for a much more accountability in the regulatory area. Are the regulations that are costing us all this water really working? And if they're not, how do we change them?